everyone, my name is Mara. I am a cloud solution architect for data and AI here at Microsoft. And today I'm going to talk to you about how you can create amazing data experiences with your Power BI reports. So I've been working with Power BI for 5 years now, and during this time I had the chance to work with a wide range of customers in different business areas, helping them transforming data into insights, or as I like to say, helping customers create amazing data experiences. During these 5 years, I saw how a good report, can influence not only the ability of users to get insights from it and make better data-driven decisions, which should be the whole point of any report, right? But I also saw how it can significantly drive adoption of tools like Power BI. But I've also seen how bad report designs and poor visualization choices can lead to frustrated users, unsuccessful projects, and reports that end up not being really used. And this wastes hours of work on report development that didn't really bring any value or impact to the business in the end. Something that I also see a lot is that people sometimes don't see the value of having good data visualization, they don't think it's that important, and so on. And I know what some of you might be thinking. Yeah, design is indeed important, but if the data behind it is no good, if it's not good, then the design is not going to solve our problems. And yes, you are correct. Design and the data that supports it go hand in hand. And if you want to make any reporting project successful, you need to spend a lot of time on both. In the end, with good data and good visualization, you will get insights. But with good data and poor visualization, you get just data, which is not very helpful most of the times. And we might as well just go to the database directly in that case. So anyway, you want to take your reports to the next level. You want to create insights, and I hear you. And now you're asking, well, where do I start? Well, let's find that out. This is my view on the report design lifecycle or process. I usually go through 5 different stages. You have discover, define, prototype, test, and deploy. In terms of design, some of the stages are more important than others, but we will get to that later in the later slides. So speaking about all the steps that you need to consider in the process, from the discovery phase, you need to do your business analysis, requirements gathering, you need to define the information architecture that you're going to have in your report, visual design, layout, you need to prototype everything, adding your images, icons, your data visualizations. And in the end, test not only the data, but also the design, and of course, deploy your report to the service. But a lot of report developers are not really doing this. And you're asking yourselves now, what are they doing instead? Okay, so they are doing something that looks more like this. Can you see the difference? Can you see how many steps we are missing here? How many steps we skipped? Can you see why your reports are probably not getting as much traction as they should? If you keep doing this, you end up getting the same results, which are bad reports, of course. And what is the result of bad reports? Failed reporting projects. And I'm sorry to disappoint you, but sometimes the process doesn't look this streamlined either, like you see here in the slide. It will look a little bit more like this, where you will have to go back and forward, trying to get a better understanding of the technical requirements, of the business requirements, and so on. Ideally, it would follow the process as I showed you before, but yeah, sometimes it really doesn't. Transforming data into insights, it's not an easy task, I have to say that. So be prepared to work hard if you really want to build something that will bring value to the business. So how do we make sure that our reports are insightful, they bring value to the business? Well, we start with the discovery phase. We start by understanding the purpose of the report we are trying to build, ask questions like, what's the problem we are trying to solve? What is the business trying to achieve with this report? How are we going to build an impactful report if we don't even know why we are building it in the first place? What is the purpose of building this report? This is one of the most important things you need to do. And yes, it has everything to do with the design. Because once you know the purpose of your report, you can define your design around it. Are you planning to build a report not knowing what's the end goal? I mean, you're already starting with the wrong foot already. Try again, go back to your stakeholders, understand the purpose, know your data, know what data you will have available, know what data you will need to have but you don't have yet to build your report. Understand that data, really do understand, take time and understand the data you will be using. Know your audience, the last one here. Know who is going to use your report. Different types of personas, like analysts, will probably want to see a very different thing from executives. Understand how familiar your users are with Power BI. This will also impact the way you build or design your report. And I can't emphasize this enough. How understanding these three key things is important. Believe me, if you skip this part, your report is pretty much doomed to failure. So never skip these three steps. Next, look at the business requirements. We are going to look at the business requirements, the requirements gathering phase. Business requirements, technical requirements, design requirements. Getting your technical requirements, even though this is not as important as probably the other two in terms of report design, it is still very important in any Power BI project. And finally, of course, gather your design requirements, branding, usability, think about accessibility, interactivity, just to name a few. We are going to get into a lot more details in the next slide. So now that we're pretty much finished with the discovery phase, we know the problem we are trying to solve, we know our data, we know our audience, we have gathered our requirements, we can finally start defining what are we actually going to build. And the first step in this phase is information architecture. So information architecture is about how we organize the information that we are going to display in the pages that we are going to build, the views, and so on, as you can see here in this example. Without good information architecture, there is no logical and effective user experience. And this is the foundation for everything else we are going to build. Information architecture will be the foundation. The content in your report needs to have a logical distribution. Here we are going to basically define that logical distribution, that structure. In this example here that you see in the slide, we have sales data. We decided we are going to create a home page to help users navigate your report, and also it looks a lot nicer. Then we will have 3 more pages below that. One for the sales status, another one for the sales leadership, and a last one for the product performance. Each one of these pages will have different views, as you can see here. Users will be able to view sales year to date, monthly, year over year. In the sales leadership page, they will be able to see the view by territory, by seller, and in the product performance page, you will be able, or the users will be able to see the data at category level, subcategory level, and also product level. So we decided how many pages we are going to build and the different views for each one of those pages. We want to have the right information in the right pages, and we also don't want our users to be overwhelmed, and so we built this views inside those pages. What each page will look like specifically, you're probably asking, we are going to get there in the next slide. So as a summary for this slide, we have focus on the user's goals, focus on cognitive effort usage, focus on the structure of your information. If the information architecture was about how you will organize your information with different pages, with different views. The layout stage goes one step further. Here you will define how each one of the pages we defined earlier will look like. Where is it going to be the header? Are we adding a navigation pane too? Are we using the filter pane, the standard one, or are we going to add a custom filter pane, for example? Here, where is the chart area going to be? The KPIs. Just have an idea on how you're going to display the information in the different pages. Use PowerPoint if you have to, like to do a preliminary sketch. And whatever layout you decide to go for, that layout should be consistent in all the different pages of your reports. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but it needs to be consistent across all the pages. Don't forget that. And now that we know the layout for our pages, it's time to go one step further again. Enter visual design. And even though I have everything in the define phase as different steps, I have to confess that sometimes they overlap and you look at 2-3 different steps at the same time. So even though I have this as separate steps, you can totally combine them and try to do more than one at the same time. I do that all the time. It's completely fine. I do this, for example, a lot with layouts and visual design. A lot of things that you need to consider for visual design, you need to consider for layout too, and vice versa. So visual design aims to improve the aesthetics and usability of your reports with the use of suitable images, space, colors, and so on. Here are a few examples of the elements and principles that you should be looking for or you should consider when you get to the visual design step. You should use all the elements that I'm displaying here carefully and try to use these elements to optimize the user experience. Visual design is like the first impression that users will have when they open your reports. A lot of the times, users will decide if they trust or if they are going to use your report based more on the visual aesthetics of the design and the report you built than the actual data that you're showing. You probably heard someone saying, "Oh my God, this report looks terrible. How can I make it better?" When you hear this, people are usually not talking about the numbers or the data that you're displaying, right? Use the elements and the principles that I'm showing here in this slide and ensure your report looks good and it ensures or conforms to any branding guidelines that you might have in your company. Usability, what is it about? When talking about usability, you can think of things like, is the report fast? Does it handle errors in an effective way? Is this report accessible? In a quote, I used to say, don't make me think. Users don't want to, or they all want to look at your report and they don't want to think too much. They want their answers to be shown in a straightforward way and as fast as possible. In this slide, I have summarized a few key points I think you should look for when building the reports and you think about usability. We have effectiveness, meaning that your report supports users in getting the insights they need accurately. You have efficiency and performance. This means users can get their insights quickly through the easiest way possible. You have engagement. Users find this report pleasant or the report you're building pleasant and it's appropriate for the purpose it was built for. Remember the purpose we talked about before in the discovery phase. Error tolerance. It means the report supports a wide range of user interactions and only shows an error in genuine error situations. For example, you have interactions between the visuals. It's not exactly an error, but for me that's completely like a usability mistake if you don't look at the interactions between visuals. Easy of learning, meaning that users quickly learn how to use your report and don't have to relearn how to use it basically every time they open it. Interaction design. We come to the last one now. In the define phase. So we've been through information architecture where we've talked about how we are going to organize our information, dividing it into different report pages. layout, where we define the layout we want to have in each one of those report pages. We have visual design, that is basically the elements that we are going to add to the layout, the charts we are going to use, and so on. And the usability, which is basically guaranteeing that the report is easy to use and that the users get the information they are looking for in an easy way. So interaction design is what connects all the previous steps together. To have good interaction design, you need good information architecture, obviously, you need a good layout, you need good visual design, you need good usability. Interaction design is like the glue to your report. Everything needs to make sense. All the steps we mentioned before are dependent on each other. So interaction design is basically making sure that everything that we've done previously makes sense. Making sure that all the steps and all the elements we've been working on before make sense together. So now we are finished with the define phase and we are moving to the prototype phase. In the prototype phase, we are basically going to take all that we've done before and bring that to life. Finally, we are going to start building our reports. One of the steps that you need to consider is the visualizations, obviously, or in other words, the charts, KPIs, and so on that you are going to use to answer the business questions that you need to answer with your reports. And I know we've talked about the data visualization before, but here we go one step further again. There are multiple types of visualizations you can use in Power BI. You have line charts, bar charts, have cards, pie charts, even though I don't like them, tables, and so on. But the most important thing here is to go back to that discovery phase, if you remember that discovery phase, and think about the purpose of this report, the purpose of each page, and what questions and insights do the users need to get from the visualizations that you are going to display in your reports. After analyzing this, you need to choose a visualization that will effectively answer those questions. You have line charts that are perfect for comparing trends over time. If you have geospatial data, you can use maps. They are very good at that. If you want to track a total, use a card visual, and so on. Really think carefully about the visuals that you're going to choose to display the information you have. Think about the purpose of that report. Always have that in mind. Next we have colors. And again, even though I have different steps for the prototype phase, as you probably notice again, most of the times you will work on all of them simultaneously. This is a prototype, so you're kind of working on everything at the same time. So when you're building your charts and visualizations, colors will also be on the top of your mind already. Colors can help emphasize important data, and they are very good at doing that. But of course, you should use only the color palette defined by your organization. That you should have defined or discovered that color palette already in the define phase. Think about what the colors represent. For example, red is usually associated with bad and green with good. So if these colors are part of your organization branding, you should think carefully how you're going to use them in your reports. Colors also increase brand recognition. And it's very, very important to have the brand identity of your organization in your reports. It makes it always look so much more engaging. But all of this, of course, when the colors are used correctly, use the colors correctly. Don't overdo it. Don't use too many colors, for example. As you can see from the example here in the slide, don't just use colors for the sake of it. And if you don't know how to use them, you have no idea how to use colors properly, my advice to you is start with gray and go from there. Gray is a great base color. Just start with that and keep adding colors as you need them. You also have fonts. As you can see in this example, things like the font size, like the font being bold, regular, and so on, make a huge difference visually. In the example here, for example, this KPIs, I have two KPIs here, two numbers below. Which one would you look at first? The bold one, right? As you can see, There are multiple ways to emphasize important data, and this is one of them. The general rule here is use fonts properly and keep it simple. Again, bold, perfect for that pop-up effect that makes you look straight away to that KPI specifically. And the last one, images and icons. I mean, do I have to say anything else here? Just look at the examples here. I love icons. So icons must make any KPI look so much more engaging and nice to look at. They also help emphasize pieces of visual information, obviously. Images, for example, are very good for home pages, so don't be shy. Use icons, please. The users in your report, they will thank you for that. Just one advice, don't overdo it. Don't use too many icons. So I talked about how you can basically, in theory, make your report look nicer, but I mean, we really haven't looked at Power BI yet, and I know you want an example, and I hear you. So let's go to a practical example of a report that I improved, and I'm going to talk you through that. So here we are at our sample report. It doesn't look that nice, does it? But just bear with me. So for context, this report was built using a data set that basically has data, or more like fake data, about stations usage of a company I called AdventureX, my fake company. So my fake company rents bikes. So think about it like one of those renting bikes that you can get pretty much anywhere in London. You just pay for 1 hour ride and you can get a bike from the dock station. The purpose of this report was to analyze utilization of the dock stations and the bikes. So I've built this report, which basically is a perfect example of a lot of reports I've seen, unfortunately. It's also a perfect example of what happens when you skip most of the report design steps I mentioned before, if you remember. First, I have no idea what this report is trying to show me. I mean, I kind of have, but it's hard to get the information architecture here. I can see there are a couple of other pages here, but this one specifically, I'm not sure really what I'm looking at. It just has a title. I'm not sure like what all these colors in this map are too, for example. The titles of the charts look kind of bad. They look terrible, actually. Visually, well, it's just a no-go for me, the entire report. If I wanted to see which bikes, for example, were the least used, so that I can maybe take some action or something like that, well, even if I try, it's pretty hard. I really have to be careful to actually see the number on these bars. It's not as easy as on these ones. And also this table, I mean, I really have to look at it to get any insights from it. It's really hard to like look at the numbers and read the numbers. It's a lot harder than if it was visually like displayed. Also, those KPIs look a bit misplaced. I'm not really sure what's happening here, but yeah, well, enough with this report. Let's look at the same report, but that was built using the principles that I mentioned to you before. So, wow, this looks already very, very different. I can actually feel like I'm looking at a report from my company, AdventureX. I see the logo and everything, nice related image in the background. I see that this report is actually using the branding colors and everything. So let's check the utilization page, and spoiler alert, it's pretty much the same as the one I showed you before, but a little bit different. Oh, this looks a little bit different indeed, don't you think? I can actually see that this report has some kind of structure to it. I can see like the branding identity of my company. I can see it has a navigation pane, a filter pane, everything, some buttons here. And oh, they have tooltips. That's cool. Let's see what this one does. So this one apparently opens Q&A, which is pretty cool. Oh, and it already opens with a chart. So let me see another questions that I might ask. And if for those of you that don't know what Q&A is, you can basically ask questions using natural language queries. So you can just type whatever you want, and it will give you some kind of chart. or a KPI. It depends on what you're trying to search for. So this is pretty cool. I also have this one here. Okay, let's check report navigation help. This might be handy. Okay, filter pane, which is a bit here to the side. Okay, next. I have the navigation pane. That's cool. I have here the buttons, and it's telling me I can ask questions using Q&A. I have here 2 views I can choose from, apparently. I have a tooltip, a customized tooltip. And I also have different hierarchies here in this chart. It's telling me that I have different views from this chart too, which is pretty nice. Okay, so let's basically get to these tooltips here. Okay, this is pretty cool. It shows me a lot more information than the one before, but without looking too cluttered, because the information is kind of hidden, like the Q&A, the tooltips. If you go here and check the next level of the hierarchy, you can see that you don't have so many rentals on Saturdays and Sundays, for example. Here you can actually see which bikes, and I actually see the numbers. It displays in a slightly different way. You can see the bikes that are least used. You can actually click here and it filters this correctly. And also this table looks a bit different now. It's kind of a tornado bar chart, so it makes it also a lot easier to visually check the numbers and our results. So this is just kind of a simple example. Unfortunately, I didn't have as much time as I wanted to make it even better, but I think you got the idea here, like all the colors, branding, navigation, information architecture, using the icons like I have here, kind of having a layout that actually is nice to look at, and it's usability in terms of usability and everything. So now that we are done with our example, let's go back to our slides. And of course, test, test, test. We got to the test phase. Test not only the data, do your data validation, of course, but also test your design. Ask your users what challenges do they face when using your report, what could be better, and improve it. Be creative. Always remember, the report you're doing is not for yourself. The report is for your users, and to make them make better data-driven decisions. So put the users at the center of your report design always. And once you're done, deploy your report to the service, obviously. So I hope you now have a better idea of the things you should consider when developing your Power BI reports, and that you become also more critical, helping others building and creating amazing data experiences with Power BI too. Just a reminder that there are other Microsoft speakers at Big Data London this year. Don't miss their sessions here. And thank you very much for being here with me today.